You can only destroy the same man's property so many times before he starts building something stronger. The sound of an airbag exploding at 6:14 on a Tuesday morning echoed through Willow Creek Estates like a shotgun blast. White smoke rolled across the cul-de-sac while a pearl-white Escalade sat crooked halfway over the curb, its front bumper hanging loose and one headlight blinking against the gray dawn like it was confused about what just happened. The smell of burnt rubber and spilled coolant drifted through the cold morning air, while Brenda Whitmore screamed loud enough to wake half the neighborhood. I just stood there in my driveway holding a cup of black coffee, staring at the reinforced trash sitting perfectly upright beside the curb. Not a scratch on it. "You psycho," Brenda shrieked, slamming her manicured hands against the steering wheel. "What the hell did you do to my car?" I took a slow sip of coffee while steam curled into the chilly Ohio air. "Funny," I said calmly. "That's the first time you've noticed the trash can." The flashing hazard lights reflected off wet pavement left behind by last night's rainstorm. Somewhere down the block, a garage door opened. Then another. Curtains shifted. People started stepping outside in slippers and robes, drawn by the noise like moths to a porch light. Nobody looked surprised. That's the thing about living in an HOA neighborhood. People notice everything. They just pretend they don't. My name's Ethan Carter. I'm 43 years old. I fix heating and cooling systems for a living. And up until 3 months ago, my biggest concern in life was whether my daughter Lily would ever stop leaving empty soda cans in my truck. Then Brenda Whitmore decided my trash can was ruining her perfect suburban kingdom. Willow Creek Estates looked peaceful from the outside. Matching mailboxes. Fresh mulch around every tree. American flags hanging from front porches like synchronized decorations in some giant suburban theater set. But underneath all that polished perfection sat people like Brenda. HOA lifers. The kind of neighbors who smiled while writing violation notices. The kind who treated a clipboard like a loaded weapon. Brenda was 52, recently divorced, drove a fully loaded Escalade that barely fit inside her garage, and walked around the neighborhood every morning wearing white tennis skirts like she was preparing for Wimbledon instead of harassing homeowners over lawn edging. She had this voice that could cut through walls. Sharp, artificially sweet, like somebody wrapped sandpaper in honey. The first time she hit my trash can, I honestly thought it was an accident. Tuesday morning. Garbage pickup day. I heard the crunch from inside my kitchen while packing Lily's lunch for school. By the time I got outside, shattered plastic covered the curb and Brenda was already halfway down the street without even tapping her brakes. The second time, she waved at me afterward. The third time, she smiled. By the fifth trash can, I realized this wasn't carelessness. It was target practice. And every Tuesday morning, my daughter had to watch it happen through the front window while some HOA Karen turned our driveway into her personal demolition derby. That's when I stopped replacing trash cans and started building one. The thing about rebuilding your life after a divorce is nobody warns you how quiet the evenings become. Not peaceful quiet either. Hollow quiet. The kind where you can hear the refrigerator humming from 2 rooms away and every empty chair in the house feels louder than a car alarm. When Lily was not staying with me, Willow Creek Estates felt less like a neighborhood and more like a movie set after filming Wrapped. Perfect lawns, perfect sidewalks, perfect silence. I bought the house because I needed stability. 2 bedrooms upstairs for Lily. A garage big enough for my tools. A driveway where I could finally park without hearing apartment neighbors screaming at midnight. After 18 years of marriage, I walked away with a rusty pickup truck, half my retirement account, and a collection of socket wrenches older than some marriages. That was it. No dramatic courtroom fight. No cheating scandal. Just 2 exhausted people who stopped fitting together somewhere along the line. So I took every overtime HVAC call I could find. Attics in July. Frozen rooftops in January. The smell of burnt dust and compressor oil became my daily routine. You spend enough years fixing other people's heat and air conditioning, you start noticing how fragile comfort really is. One broken system, and suddenly everybody is miserable. That is kind of what happened to my life. Lily stayed with me every other week. 16 years old. Smart enough to see through fake people instantly. She hated Willow Creek the moment we moved in. Said the neighborhood looked like step forward with better landscaping. Tuesday mornings became our little routine. I would wake up before sunrise, roll the trash can to the curb, and make pancakes while Lily sat at the kitchen counter pretending not to scroll social media before school. Sometimes she would complain about chemistry class. Sometimes she would steal bacon straight off the pan when she thought I was not looking. Small moments. Normal moments. The kind you fight to keep after life falls apart. Then Brenda started making those Tuesday mornings miserable. First, Lily laughed about it. Maybe she just sucks at driving. She joked after trash can number 2 exploded across the curb. But by the fourth one, even she stopped smiling. Every Tuesday around 6:15, we would hear that Escalade coming before we saw it. Low engine rumble. Tires brushing the curb. Then crunch. Plastic cracking loud enough to echo through the houses. Brenda never stopped afterward. Never apologized. She just kept driving like she was late for a meeting nobody actually wanted to attend. One morning I caught Lily staring through the blinds after it happened again. Her jaw tightened while coffee steam drifted between us in the kitchen. "Dad?" she asked quietly. "Why does she hate us?" That question sat heavier than any toolbox I had ever carried. Because the truth was, Brenda did not just hate the trash can. She hated what it represented. Me. The blue-collar guy with work boots on the porch. The old pickup truck with HVAC magnets on the side. The divorced father trying to rebuild his life in a neighborhood full of people pretending theirs had always been perfect. And once I realized that, I stopped seeing those Tuesday mornings as accidents. I started seeing them as messages. Brenda Whitmore treated Willow Creek Estates like a tiny kingdom wrapped in beige vinyl siding and property tax assessments. Every morning around 7, she rolled through the neighborhood in that oversized Escalade with her sunglasses on even when the sky was cloudy, crawling past driveways like a patrol officer hunting fugitives. The soft electric hum of golf course sprinklers mixed with the low growl of her V8 engine became part of the neighborhood soundtrack. Everybody knew when Brenda was outside because conversations stopped. Garage doors closed faster. People suddenly remembered somewhere else they needed to be. She was not technically retired, although nobody seemed entirely sure what she actually did anymore besides terrorize homeowners and post passive-aggressive reminders in the HOA Facebook group. Her profile picture looked professionally staged. White blazer. Perfect blonde highlights. Arms crossed in front of the neighborhood entrance sign like she personally founded the subdivision. Brenda loved rules the way some people love religion. Not because they believed in fairness. Because rules gave them power over strangers. One afternoon, I came home from replacing a rooftop compressor in 93-degree heat to find a violation notice taped to my garage door. The paper flapped in the warm breeze while sweat dripped down the back of my neck under my work shirt. Visual clutter visible from street. That was the official violation. The visual clutter turned out to be my red Craftsman toolbox sitting inside my open garage while I unloaded equipment. Not in the driveway. Not blocking anything. Inside my own garage. I could actually smell fresh cut grass from the landscaping crew nearby while I stood there rereading the notice, trying to process the stupidity. $25 fine if not corrected within 48 hours. Lily read it over my shoulder and laughed so hard soda almost came out of her nose. "She really cited you for owning tools?" she asked. Apparently wrench ownership lowers property values now. But Brenda was only warming up. 2 days later, another notice appeared. Unauthorized commercial signage, meaning the small magnetic HVAC company logo on my pickup truck. Then came excessive noise concerns because I used a cordless impact driver at 6:30 in the evening while fixing a loose gate hinge. Brenda never confronted me directly at first. That was the funny part. She preferred paperwork, emails, official-sounding language. The kind of fake authority people use when they want to feel important without risking an actual conversation. Then came the neighborhood app posts. Concerned resident reports increasing signs of industrial activity in family areas. Fear. Not legal authority. Not intelligence. Just social intimidation wrapped in polite suburban language. The first time she finally confronted me face-to-face happened on a Thursday evening while I was replacing the wheels on trash can number 6. The air smelled like rain and fresh asphalt from roadwork down the block. Brenda walked across my lawn holding a clipboard against her chest like a riot shield. "You know," she said, tilting her head with that artificial smile. "Some people simply are not a good fit for communities with standards." Tighten the wheel bolt slowly without looking up. "And some people," I replied calmly, "mistake controlling others for having a personality." Her smile froze instantly. For a second, the mask slipped. I saw the irritation underneath all that polished HOA professionalism. Her fingers tightened around the clipboard hard enough for the plastic to creak. Then she glanced toward my house where Lily sat inside doing homework near the front window. And that was the moment I realized Brenda was not planning to stop. The next Tuesday started with rain tapping against my kitchen windows before sunrise. Cold October rain. The kind that turns suburban streets silver under streetlights and makes everything smell like wet pavement and mulch. I rolled trash can number 7 to the curb at 5:45 in the morning while Lily sat inside, half asleep eating cereal in one of my old hoodies. The wheels rattled softly across the driveway while water dripped off the lid onto my boots. I remember looking down the empty street thinking maybe the weather would keep Brenda inside for once. That lasted exactly 23 minutes. At 6:08, the Escalade appeared at the end of the cul-de-sac with headlights glowing through the rain like a freight train coming through fog. Same speed, same angle, same deliberate drift toward the curb. Crunch. Plastic exploded across the street hard enough to send one wheel rolling halfway into my neighbor's yard. Brenda never even touched the brakes. Red taillights disappeared around the corner while rainwater carried coffee grounds and paper towels down the storm drain. Behind me, I heard Lily quietly say, "Seriously?" I stood there in the drizzle staring at the broken trash can pieces scattered across the asphalt while cold rain soaked through my work jacket. Something inside me finally clicked into place. Not rage exactly. Clarity. Like tightening the last bolt on a machine you have been trying to figure out for weeks. Brenda wanted a reaction. She wanted yelling. Drama. Public confrontation she could twist into another complaint form. Instead, I started paying attention. That afternoon, I installed security cameras under the garage overhang and near the porch light. Nothing fancy. Just weatherproof motion cameras connected to my phone. I told Lily they were for package theft because I did not want her thinking we were living under siege. But the truth was, I needed proof. By the next Tuesday, I had footage. Crystal clear. Brenda's Escalade drifting 6 inches over the curb line before impact, like muscle memory. No hesitation. No surprise. Deliberate steering input every single time. I sat at my kitchen table replaying the footage while the smell of reheated pizza filled the room and Lily worked on algebra nearby. Frame by frame. Tire angle. Speed. Positioning. Patterns. Years in HVAC teach you to diagnose problems people overlook. Most systems fail gradually. Tiny signs. Repeated stress points. Brenda had patterns too. Every Tuesday morning at nearly the exact same time. Every impact from the same front passenger corner. Same wheel angle. Same approach speed. It was not random behavior anymore. It was routine. Then the certified letter arrived. I found it jammed halfway into my mailbox after work on a Friday. Official HOA envelope. Thick paper. Expensive ink smell. Formal safety violation. According to Brenda, my trash can placement was creating a hazardous obstruction for neighborhood traffic. Earlier that week, during lunch break inside my truck, I looked up the city sanitation code online. Trash receptacles were legally required to sit within 3 feet of the curb on collection days. Exactly where mine had always been. Which meant Brenda knew she had no actual authority. She was inventing rules and hoping intimidation would do the rest. That night, Lily found me sitting alone in the garage watching the security footage again on my tablet while rain rattled softly against the garage door. "You are doing the thing," she said carefully. "What thing?" "The quiet thing you do when you are about to fix something." Grinder sparks from an old repair project still stained the concrete floor near my boots. The smell of motor oil and cold steel hung in the air while the footage replayed again. Crunch. Drift. Impact. Same angle every time. I looked at the shattered trash can leaning against the workbench, then slowly smiled. Because for the first time in weeks, I was not thinking about replacing another trash can. I was thinking about engineering one. The following Saturday smelled like welding smoke, cold rainwater, and fresh-cut steel. I had the garage door halfway open while October wind pushed dead leaves across the driveway in little spirals. Inside the garage, an old rock station played quietly through a dusty radio while sparks snapped against the concrete floor from my angle grinder. Lily sat on a folding chair wrapped in one of my hoodies watching me work with the same expression she used during detective shows. Curious. Slightly concerned. "You are really building a trash can," she said slowly. "Technically," I replied, tightening my welding mask. "I am reinforcing structural integrity." She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might detach permanently. The original shell came from trash can number 6. I salvaged what was left of the outer plastic casing and stripped the inside completely bare. Underneath my workbench sat 2 bags of fast-setting concrete, steel tubing left over from an old furnace install, and a wheel assembly rated for industrial dumpsters instead of suburban garbage pickup. Brenda thought she was hitting hollow plastic every Tuesday morning. That assumption was about to become very expensive. I measured everything carefully because that is what years in HVAC teaches you. Precision matters. A quarter-inch mistake can wreck an entire system. I built a steel frame first. Thick square tubing welded into a compact inner cage anchored directly through a reinforced concrete core. Heavy enough to survive impact. Compact enough to look completely normal from outside. By noon, the garage smelled like hot metal and curing cement, while football commentary drifted faintly from somebody's television down the street. Every few minutes neighbors walked dogs past my driveway and slowed down trying to figure out what I was building. I just smiled and kept working. The funny thing about suburban neighborhoods is people ignore obvious problems for months, but the second a man starts quietly solving one in his garage, everybody gets nervous. Around 2 in the afternoon, Lily handed me a bottle of water while I bolted the wheel assembly into place. "You know she is going to lose her mind, right?" she asked. "Probably, and you are okay with that." I wiped concrete dust off my hands with a shop rag. "Lily, there is a difference between hurting somebody and letting them experience consequences." She stared at the half-finished trash can sitting in the middle of the garage. Gray concrete hidden beneath black plastic. Reinforced steel hidden behind ordinary suburban appearance. That sounds like something Batman would say after property damage. I laughed for the first time all week. By sunset the project was finished. From the outside, it looked completely ordinary. Same dark gray color. Same dimensions. Same lid shape. But underneath, the thing weighed nearly 400 pounds. I rolled it slowly down the driveway for a test fit, while gravel crunched beneath the reinforced wheels. The can barely moved unless pushed deliberately. Perfect. Then came the extra details. I mounted a motion-triggered camera low near the flower bed facing the curb. Added another angle from inside the garage window. Synced everything to cloud storage automatically. No missing footage. No technical accidents. Just clear documentation. Years fixing expensive systems taught me one simple truth. People behave very differently when evidence exists. Sunday evening brought another HOA email from Brenda. Excessive garage activity. Potential noise disturbance. I read the message while standing in my kitchen beside a pot of chili simmering on the stove. The smell of onions and black pepper filled the house, while rain tapped softly against the windows again. "She knows you are up to something," Lily said from the counter. "No," I answered quietly, looking out toward the driveway. "She thinks I am intimidated." Tuesday morning was still 2 days away, but for the first time since moving into Willow Creek Estates, I slept peacefully. Tuesday arrived cold and clear. The kind of autumn morning where your breath hangs in the air and every sound carries farther than normal. I woke up at 5:10 before my alarm even went off. Years of early HVAC calls trained my body better than any clock ever could. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional tick from the old kitchen wall clock. Outside, streetlights cast pale orange reflections across damp pavement, while frost clung lightly to the edges of parked cars. I poured coffee into my thermos and looked out through the kitchen window toward the curb. The reinforced trash can stood there perfectly still beneath the streetlight. Ordinary. Boring. Invisible. Exactly how I wanted it. Lily shuffled downstairs wearing flannel pajama pants and one sock. "Today is the day, huh?" she asked quietly while grabbing orange juice from the refrigerator. "Probably." "You nervous?" I thought about that for a second. The strange thing was, I was not nervous at all. Calm actually. Calm the way you feel after triple-checking electrical wiring before flipping a breaker back on. Because deep down, I knew something important. I had not rigged a trap. I had simply stopped making myself easy to damage. "No," I answered honestly. "I am tired." At 5:55, I rolled the can the final few inches into exact city code position near the curb. 3 feet from the edge of the pavement. Same placement as always. Same angle. Same driveway. Cold air smelled like chimney smoke and wet leaves while somewhere farther down the neighborhood a dog barked once, then went silent again. Back inside, I opened the security camera feeds on my phone and set it beside my coffee mug on the kitchen table. For camera angles. Crystal clear. Time stamped automatically. Lily sat beside me pretending to scroll through her phone while secretly staring at the live video feeds every few seconds. At 6:11, headlights appeared at the end of the cul-de-sac. "Showtime," Lily whispered. The Escalade rolled slowly into view, glossy white paint reflecting porch lights as it moved through the neighborhood with the same deliberate confidence Brenda carried everywhere else. I watched the front tires drift slightly toward the curb exactly like they had every Tuesday for nearly 2 months. Same pattern, same angle, same assumption. Inside the kitchen, the heater clicked softly on while warm air drifted through ceiling vents. On my phone screen, I saw the passenger side will climb the curb. Then came the sound. Not plastic crunching this time. A deep metallic impact that echoed through the street like somebody dropped an engine block onto concrete. The front end of the Escalade jerked violently sideways. Airbags exploded instantly inside the cabin with a muffled boom. The SUV stopped crooked halfway across the curb while steam hissed upward from beneath the hood. Silence followed. Total silence. Even the neighborhood dogs stopped barking. Lily slowly lowered her phone. "Holy language," I interrupted automatically, although honestly I was thinking the exact same thing. Brenda shoved her driver's side door open hard enough to bounce it back against the hinge. She stepped out wearing oversized sunglasses and tennis clothes despite it being 43 degrees outside. Her expression looked less angry than confused, like reality had suddenly stopped cooperating with her expectations. She stared down at the trash sitting perfectly upright beside the wrecked front bumper. Then she looked directly toward my house. I stepped onto the porch holding my coffee while cold air hit my face. Steam drifted upward from the thermos cup between my hands. Brenda pointed at the trash can with shaking fingers. "What did you do?" she yelled. I looked at the can, then at her SUV, then back at the can again. "Nothing," I answered calmly. "It is just not made of cheap plastic anymore." Porch lights flicked on all across Willow Creek Estates. Front doors opened. Neighbors emerged into the cold morning air wrapped in robes and blankets. And for the first time since moving into that neighborhood, Brenda Whitmore suddenly looked very small. The sound of tow trucks arriving at sunrise has a strange kind of poetry to it. Hydraulic hisses, metal chains rattling across pavement, diesel engines idling while half-awake neighbors pretend they are checking their mail instead of watching suburban disaster unfold in real time. By 6:45 that morning, Willow Creek Estates looked less like a peaceful HOA community and more like the aftermath of a very expensive lesson. Brenda stood near the curb wrapped in a white tennis jacket with her arms folded tightly across her chest while the tow truck operator inspected the crushed front suspension on her Escalade. Steam still drifted faintly from beneath the hood into the cold morning air. The reinforced trash can remain perfectly upright beside the curb like some kind of silent witness. I could feel eyes watching me from every porch in the neighborhood while I stood near my mailbox drinking coffee. Nobody approached Brenda. That was the first real crack in her armor. People fear power right up until the moment it stops looking invincible. Officer Daniels arrived around 7. Mid-50s. Calm voice. The kind of cop who looked permanently tired of everybody's nonsense. He walked slowly around the scene while scribbling notes on a small pad. Brenda launched into her explanation before he even finished introducing himself. Brenda's jaw tightened so hard I thought her teeth might crack. "That is not the point." "Actually," Daniels replied calmly, "that is exactly the point." Cold wind pushed dry leaves across the street, while neighbors lingered beside driveways pretending not to listen. Daniels asked for my side of the story. I handed him my phone without saying much. For camera angles. 8 weeks of footage. Same vehicle. Same driver. Same deliberate steering pattern every Tuesday morning. He watched quietly while the morning sun reflected off his sunglasses. Crunch after crunch after crunch. Plastic exploding. Brenda driving away each time without stopping. "You documented all this?" he asked. "Every incident." "Did you report it?" Embarrassment turning into distance. Brenda had ruled Willow Creek through intimidation for years because nobody wanted conflict. But public humiliation changes everything in suburbia, especially when evidence exists. Around 8:30, the insurance adjuster arrived. Young guy in a navy jacket carrying a tablet and coffee that smelled strong enough to melt paint. He inspected the damage carefully while Brenda followed him around talking nonstop about unsafe homeowner conduct. Then he asked the question that really changed the day. "Can you explain why the vehicle crossed the curb line?" Brenda froze for half a second. Tiny pause. Barely noticeable. But after weeks of studying her behavior patterns, I noticed it immediately. The road was wet, she answered quickly. The adjuster glanced at the security footage again. All 8 times. Even Lily nearly choked trying not to laugh from the porch steps behind me. By noon, rumors spread through Willow Creek faster than wildfire in dry grass. Brenda had apparently filed multiple prior claims involving curb impacts over the last 2 years. Cursive posts, mailboxes, yard lighting, always blamed on poor visibility or hazardous placement. Suddenly neighbors started connecting dots. Mrs. Holloway from 2 streets over quietly admitted Brenda hit her flower bed last spring and threatened legal action if she complained publicly. Another neighbor mentioned mailbox damage that mysteriously disappeared after an HOA waiver. The pattern everyone ignored suddenly looked impossible to miss. Brenda spent years acting untouchable because nobody compared notes. But once people start talking, power built on intimidation collapses fast. And standing there beside that completely undamaged trash can while another tow truck dragged away her shattered Escalade. I realized something important. The parking lot overflowed onto the street while cold November wind rattled dry branches overhead. Inside, the clubhouse smelled like burnt coffee, carpet cleaner, and tension. Folding chairs scraped against tile floors while neighbors whispered in tight little circles pretending they were not absolutely thrilled to watch Brenda Whitmore finally sit on the other side of public scrutiny. I arrived wearing work boots and a clean flannel straight from a furnace replacement job across town. My hands still smelled faintly like copper pipe flux and dust from attic insulation. Lily walked beside me carrying a folder with printed screenshots from the security footage. Brenda sat near the front beside the HOA board table wearing a cream-colored blazer and an expression so stiff it looked painful. The usual confidence was gone. No sharp smile. No fake politeness. Just tight shoulders and eyes darting nervously every time somebody new walked through the door. Fear changes people fast when they realize documentation exists. HOA President Mark Delaney cleared his throat into the microphone while papers shook slightly in his hands. Tonight's meeting concerns recent community incidents and allegations regarding selective enforcement of HOA policies. Translation: everybody finally realized Brenda had become a legal liability. Then the complaints started. One by one, neighbors stood up holding copies of violation notices, repair invoices, and photographs. Mrs. Holloway spoke first about her damaged flower bed. Then came a retired teacher named Carl Benson, whose mailbox Brenda allegedly clipped last winter before threatening fines over improper placement afterward. Another family described repeated warnings over completely legal driveway parking after disagreeing with Brenda during a landscaping vote. The stories piled up fast. Tiny humiliations, intimidation tactics, selective enforcement, years of neighborhood resentment finally finding oxygen. Brenda kept interrupting at first. That is completely out of context. Community standards matter. You are all being manipulated. But every denial sounded weaker than the one before it. Especially after Lily connected the clubhouse projector to her laptop. The room went completely silent when the footage started playing on the wall behind the board table. 8 separate Tuesday mornings. 8 separate impacts. Same SUV. Same steering angle. Same deliberate movement toward the curb. Crunch after crunch echoed softly through the clubhouse speakers while neighbors watched Brenda repeatedly destroy property, then drive away without stopping. Nobody said a word during the videos. They did not need to. The evidence spoke perfectly fine on its own. Then came the real twist. Treasurer Nancy Porter stood slowly from the side table, holding several folders against her chest. Nervous energy practically rolled off her. "There is something else," she said quietly. Turns out Brenda had authorized over $6,000 in HOA legal consultation fees over the previous year, tied almost entirely to enforcement disputes involving only 4 homeowners. All of them people she personally targeted, including me. Even worse, several invoices came from her brother-in-law's law office without formal board approval. The air inside the clubhouse changed instantly. You could feel it, like pressure dropping before a thunderstorm. People stopped seeing Brenda as annoying. They started seeing her as dangerous. Mark Delaney removed his reading glasses slowly while staring down at the invoices. "Brenda," he asked carefully, "did you authorize these expenses independently?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out for a second. Then anger finally replaced panic. Somebody in this neighborhood had to maintain standards, she snapped. We'll let this place turn into chaos. The room exploded after that. Neighbors talking over each other. Chair scraping. Somebody near the back actually laughed out loud. Through all of it, I just sat quietly beside Lily while the noise swirled around us. Because honestly, the punishment was already happening. Brenda spent years controlling Willow Creek through silence and intimidation. Now she was trapped in the one thing she could never control: public accountability. By the end of the meeting, the board voted unanimously to suspend her HOA authority pending legal review. People filed out into the freezing night air afterward. I noticed something strange. For the first time since moving there, neighbors actually smiled at each other in the parking lot. No more white Escalade crawling through the subdivision like a patrol vehicle hunting criminals disguised as homeowners. Winter settled over Ohio slowly that year. Frost-coated rooftops each morning while chimney smoke drifted above the houses in soft gray ribbons. The neighborhood finally looked normal again. Human again. One Saturday morning I stood in my driveway tightening the bolts on Lily's bike, while sunlight reflected off patches of melting ice near the curb. The garage door stood open behind me, warm air carrying out the smell of coffee and sawdust from a small shelving project I had been working on. Across the street, Mrs. Holloway waved while walking her dog. 2 houses down, Carl Benson chatted with another neighbor while unpacking groceries. Tiny things. Ordinary things. But that was the point. People had started talking to each other again instead of hiding behind blinds and HOA emails. Brenda's house sat dark most mornings now. Rumor was she resigned from the HOA board entirely after the legal review confirmed unauthorized spending tied to selective enforcement complaints. The neighborhood attorney recommended financial restitution to cover improperly issued fines and legal fees. Turns out paperwork becomes very dangerous when somebody finally reads it carefully. I never sued Brenda personally. Honestly, I did not need to. Consequences already arrived naturally. Her insurance claim got denied after the investigation confirmed repeated intentional curb impacts documented over multiple incidents. The Escalade disappeared a few weeks later, replaced by a modest gray crossover nobody noticed. Fitting somehow. The woman who spent years craving attention suddenly drove the most forgettable vehicle in the neighborhood. Best part happened on a freezing Tuesday morning in January. I opened the front door before sunrise and nearly laughed out loud. Sitting beside the reinforced trash can near the curb was a second one. Then I noticed another farther down the street. Then another. 3 different neighbors had quietly reinforced their own trash cans with sandbags, concrete pavers, and weighted bases. Not because they expected trouble, because the whole neighborhood had turned my little act of resistance into a running joke. Lily stepped onto the porch beside me wearing her winter coat and knitted gloves while cold air turned our breath white. You started a movement, she said, grinning. Apparently suburban people get really emotional about trash cans. She laughed softly and walked down the driveway carrying something behind her back. Spray paint cans, black and silver. Before I could ask what she was doing, she crouched beside the reinforced can and carefully painted 2 words across the front in sharp metallic letters. Different. The silver paint shimmered under the porch light, while frost sparkled across the curb nearby. I stared at those words for a second longer than I expected, because she was not talking about the trash can anymore. Over the following weeks, neighbors slowly started inviting each other over again. Small cookouts, football Sundays. Somebody even organized a spring block party without 15 pages of HOA restrictions attached to it. Turns out people behave differently once fear leaves the room. One evening near sunset, I sat alone on the porch drinking coffee while cold wind rattled bare tree branches overhead. The reinforced trash can stood near the curb exactly where it always had, untouched. Across the street, porch lights flickered on one by one as the sky turned deep orange over Willow Creek estates. Peaceful, ordinary, finally. And sitting there listening to distant laughter echo through the neighborhood, I realized something Brenda never understood. Respect is not built through intimidation. Communities are not controlled through fear. And sometimes the loudest form of justice is not revenge at all. Sometimes it is simply refusing to stay easy to break.